Careful human, she purred without turning. Think that again, and I'll make sure the whole village knows what you imagine doing with my tail. If you love stories where humans change everything through heart, not power, make sure to subscribe for more HFY sci-fi tales like this one. The twin sons of Valhera bled through the jungle canopy like molten gold, spilling light over the Terran outposts, half-built towers, and tangled roots of alien flora. The air shimmered with distant hums of psionic energy, currents only the locals could sense. And among them stood Aaron Kale, human engineer turned reluctant diplomat, staring helplessly as a beautiful orange-furred vulpine woman tilted her head, eyes glinting with too much amusement for his comfort. He hadn't said a word, but she already knew what he was thinking. Worse, she smiled about it. The first thing Aaron Kale learned about Valhera was that it was too quiet. Not quiet like peace, quiet like the forest itself was listening. The trees breathed, the ground hummed, even the rivers whispered secrets through the stones. And if that wasn't unsettling enough, the people, the Vulpites, were polite, musical, and so damn serene that he felt like an intruder just by existing. He was supposed to be here 2 weeks tops, rebuild the downcom relay, send some diagnostics, maybe drink a local brew or two before shipping back to orbit. Simple job, except no one told him his assigned liaison would be a mind-reading foxwoman with eyes like molten amber and a habit of smiling right before embarrassing him. Vila greeted him the first morning at the edge of the settlement, wearing a woven wrap of silken vines and armor bits shaped like petals. Her fur glowed faintly in the sunrise, orange fading into gold at the tips. You are the human engineer. Yes, the one who thinks too much about how strange my ears look. Aaron nearly choked on his breath. I what? I didn't say. You didn't have to, she said sweetly, tapping her temple. I hear more than words. And just like that, every ounce of Terran professionalism evaporated into humid air. The following days were chaos wrapped in awkwardness. He tried not to think. She kept hearing him think. When he focused on work, she leaned over his shoulder, her scent like citrus and wild flowers, purring soft laughter as she accidentally commented on his internal monologue. You wonder if I brush my tail every morning? You're very loud in here, Aaron Kale. No, I won't let you pet it. Yet he tried to keep his distance, burying himself in circuits and hollow tools. But she had this habit of hovering nearby, listening, learning, and occasionally making him question his sanity. What unsettled him most wasn't that she could read his thoughts. It was that she answered them. When he thought, does she ever stop smiling? She smirked. When he thought, she's infuriatingly gorgeous. Her ears twitched, and her tail flicked once, dangerously pleased. After 3 days, he was convinced that Valheran's psychic etiquette classes should be mandatory for humans. Their work sites sat at the forest edge, where vines wrapped themselves around old metal spires and the soil pulsed faintly with bioelectric light. VA explained it was sacred ground. Something about the weave, the invisible current of thought linking all living things. Not all of us hear it, she said one evening, crouching beside him as he recalibrated a power node. But I was trained young. I listened to hearts, not just minds. He looked up at her, sweat streaking his brow. That's terrifying. Her grin widened. Only if you have something to hide. Everyone's got something to hide. Then your world must be very noisy. Her tone wasn't mocking that time. It was curious, thoughtful. He caught himself staring longer than he should have, and she caught the thought before he could blink. Yes, she murmured, not meeting his gaze. You are correct. I am different, even for my people. Something softened between them that evening, something that lingered when they laughed later over her attempts to understand Terran jokes. When he explained sarcasm, she blinked and said, So, you say the opposite of what you mean to make someone smile. Strange, but kind. Aaron smirked. You'd be dangerous with sarcasm. I am already dangerous, she said with perfect deadpan timing, then added, Was that sarcasm? He laughed, and she smiled, and the silence between them afterward felt almost warm. That night, lying in his small, prefabricated bunk, Aaron stared up at the humming ceiling, trying not to think about her, her voice, her tail, the way she looked when light caught her fur like fire through glass. Of course, trying not to think about someone when they can hear you think about them is a special kind of torture. Her voice slipped faintly through his mind, then teasing but soft. You humans make so much noise even in your sleep. He sat upright, nearly smacking his head. Va, a chuckle echoed like a whisper of wind through his thoughts. Sleep, Aaron Kale. I'm not in your room yet, and somewhere in the dark. Her laughter lingered long after she was gone. Aaron woke the next morning, determined to win one battle, just one, against the telepathic foxwoman who turned his entire mission into a psychological endurance test. He brewed his ration coffee, strapped on his tool harness, and promised himself he'd think of nothing. Nothing at all. Blank, empty mind. He repeated it like a mantra as he approached the worksite where Vio waited, tail curling lazily behind her like a metronome of mischief. Good morning, human, she greeted that lilt in her voice, like she already knew what flavor of defeat he brought today. Morning, he said, face neutral, thoughts locked down tighter than a sealed airlock. She tilted her head, amber eyes narrowing slightly. Then she laughed, a soft, bell-like sound that made his stomach twist. You're doing that thing again. What thing? The thing where you shout, I'm not thinking about you, over and over inside your skull. He groaned, dragging a hand down his face. You're impossible. I'm gifted, she corrected proudly. Gifted, cursed semantics. Vela smirked, crouching beside the relay terminal. I can stop listening if you prefer. Oh, please do. Very well, she said sweetly. And then, a few minutes later, right as he was adjusting the frequency tuner, she murmured, You know your face looks amusingly serious when you're concentrating. Aaron froze, mid-turn of the wrench. You said you weren't listening. I lied, she said, and flashed a grin that could have powered the entire comm tower. By noon, he'd abandoned all hope of inner peace. Every errant thought betrayed him. The frustration, the curiosity, the admiration he tried to bury. She heard it all, answered some of it, and teased him for the rest. When he cursed under his breath after dropping a tool, her voice brushed the edge of his thoughts. You humans swear so much, it's like punctuation. When he admired the way her fur shimmered in the sunlight, purely out of aesthetic appreciation, of course, she flicked her ear and said, Thank you, and yes, I do groom it daily. It was maddening. By mid-afternoon, they were kneeling shoulder to shoulder in the dust, rerouting a tangled mess of crystalline cables that pulsed faintly with psychic resonance. Vio hummed under her breath as she worked, some vulpine tune that resonated faintly in his chest, rhythmic and strangely comforting. You hum when you're nervous, he said, trying to distract himself. You imagine things when you're flustered, she shot back without missing a beat. He nearly yanked the cable wrong. I do not. Her tail brushed his arm in mock innocence. Oh, you absolutely do. It's adorable, Aaron exhaled sharply. You know where I come from. Reading someone's mind without permission is, what's the word? Illegal. Where I come from, Ba replied, standing to stretch. Broadcasting your every emotional hiccup into the air, like a radio beacon, is considered an invitation. Her eyes sparkled as she leaned closer. You, Aaron Kale, are the loudest mind I've ever met. I'm flattered, he muttered dryly. You should be, she said with mock sincerity. Most humans I've met think in dull colors, duty, logic, survival. But you, she paused, her gaze softening. You think in stories. You imagine what could be. It's warm. That stopped him. There was no teasing in her tone now, just quiet wonder and a sincerity that cut through the humor like sunlight through mist. He managed a small smile. That's either the nicest insult I've ever heard, or the weirdest compliment. Viola tilted her head, ears twitching. It's both. They worked in companionable silence after that. Her presence no longer a constant distraction, but something steadier, easier. Every so often, she'd hum again, and he'd find himself humming back. The melody strange, but soothing. When dusk came, they shared rations beneath the comm tower's scaffolding. She asked him about Earth, its single sun, its rains, the scent of cities. He asked her about the weave, the network of thoughts that bound her kind. It's like breathing, she said softly, eyes glowing faintly in the twilight. But mine reaches farther too far. Most fear it. You don't. Maybe because I've got nothing to hide, he said, then added under his breath, except the part where you drive me insane. She smirked. I heard that. I know. A flicker of laughter passed between them, shared and unspoken. As the stars ignited above Valhalla, Aaron realized he didn't mind her hearing him anymore. What scared him wasn't that she could listen. It was that he wanted her to. The village lights shimmered like fireflies trapped in glass, each crystal lantern pulsing with faint psychic hums that vibrated through the air. Aaron had finished his work early, hands coated in dust and satisfaction, when Vela appeared beside him, holding 2 carved cups that smelled faintly of honey and static. "Celebration," she declared. The relay hums again. "Sometimes it feels like drowning in everyone else's dreams." Her voice had softened, stripped of teasing. He watched her tail lower, brushing against the soil like an anchor. "Sounds lonely," he said quietly. "It is." She smiled faintly. "But not when you're nearby. Your thoughts are loud but clear. Simple things. Honest things." Aaron wasn't sure if that was an insult or a compliment. "Simple, huh?" "Like sunlight through a leaf," she said, eyes distant. "When I listen to humans, I can almost remember what peace used to sound like." Something fluttered in his chest, unexpected and dangerous. "You've been reading too deep," he said gently. "I can't help it." She took another sip. "You hum when you work. You imagine things when you're bored. You worry about hurting people even when no one's asked you to." "Stop making me sound decent," he muttered. "You'll ruin my reputation." Vela laughed, and it was music, real and psychic, brushing through his thoughts with warmth. But as the night deepened and their drinks disappeared, that laughter began to warp. He felt at first a flicker of emotion, not his own. Curiosity, affection, something bright and embarrassed, tangled together. Then her mental voice, soft and startled. "Oh, stars. He really doesn't know how beautiful he looks when he smiles." Aaron blinked, staring. Avella, her eyes widened. "Oh, no, I didn't. You just forget you heard that." "I didn't hear it," he said, grinning. "You broadcasted it." She covered her face with her hands for fluffing at the ears and mortification. "It's the drink. It lowers barriers. I didn't mean—" He leaned in a little. "Didn't mean to call me beautiful." Her tail thumped the ground once hard. "Human, yes. Stop enjoying this." He laughed, holding up his hands. "I can't help it. This is revenge for every time you read my brain when I was trying not to think about you." Va peeked between her fingers, glaring though the glow beneath her fur betrayed a smile. "You're impossible." "Gifted," he said, echoing her line from before. Her laughter cracked, genuine and bright. They stayed like that a while, teasing and laughing, until the stars swam. At some point, her tail brushed against his knee. Not by accident this time, and neither of them pulled away. When the music from the village quieted, the world felt wrapped in stillness. Aaron caught her gaze, saw warmth there that hadn't been there before. Something unspoken, but shared. "I didn't mean to hear your thoughts either," he murmured. "I know," she said, "but I didn't mind." They sat together until the lanterns dimmed, the night humming softly between their minds, and though either spoke again, both knew something subtle had shifted. The teasing now carried tenderness, and the silence was no longer empty. The next morning, the calm of Valhalla cracked. Aaron woke to the sound of shouts echoing across the village square. Sharp, frightened tones cutting through the usual melodic hum. When he stumbled outside, half-dressed and wholly confused, he found the air flickering with faint psychic distortion, shimmering like heat haze. The calm relay tower they'd repaired last week pulsed erratically, threads of blue-white light crawling up its sides. The ground trembled faintly underfoot. Nearby, vulpines clutched their heads, murmuring in pain. And in the center of it all, Vio stood still as a statue, eyes glowing too bright for ruffling in waves, her tail thrashing like a live wire. Vioa Aaron shouted, running to her. She didn't respond. The closer he got, the more the air itself seemed to hum with stray thoughts. Fear, confusion, memories, voices overlapping into an incomprehensible roar. It wasn't sound. It was mindstorm. He grabbed her shoulders, ignoring the static sting that raced up his arms. "Vioa, hey, focus on me." Her lips parted, breast shaking. "Too many," she whispered, voice trembling through both air and thought. "They're all shouting. Can't shut it out." Her mental voice cracked like glass. Aaron didn't think, he just acted. He pulled her into his arms, grounding her against him, his voice low and steady. "Listen to me. Just me, okay? No one else? You're not alone. You're safe." He repeated it like an anchor, like a prayer, until the static in the air began to ebb. Slowly, her trembling lessened. The psychic noise thinned to a low, dull throb. She clung to him, forehead pressed to his shoulder, eyes dimming back to gold. "I could hear everyone. I figured." He exhaled shakily, trying to joke despite the tension. Next time, maybe schedule your telepathic meltdown after breakfast. She let out a breathless laugh against his chest. You're insufferable, but effective. It took hours for the storm to fully subside. By the time the relay stabilized, the suns were sinking low, painting the forest in amber and copper. Vela sat on a rock near the edge of the clearing, still pale under her fur. Aaron sat beside her, arms on his knees, exhausted but unwilling to leave her side. The relay amplified the weave, she murmured. I thought I could contain it, but the psychic lattice reacted. Every thought within 10 miles flooded in. Sounds like my first week in boot camp, he said dryly, except less telepathy, more yelling sergeants. Vela's tail flicked weakly. You joke even now. It's a survival mechanism. He smiled faintly. Helps when I'm terrified out of my skull. She turned her head to look at him then. Really? Look, you were scared for me. Of course I was. The simplicity of it seemed to stop her. For once, there was no teasing, no smirk, just quiet wonder. You shouldn't have been able to reach me. No one else could. He shrugged. Guess I'm stubborn. Her ears twitched, and a soft smile curved her lips. Or maybe your thoughts are louder than everyone else's. Aaron chuckled. You say that like it's a compliment. It is. A silence settled between them. Not awkward, but heavy with the unspoken. The forest hummed softly, though we finally quiet again. VA's eyes shimmered faintly as she studied him. When you touched me, she said quietly. The noise faded like a wall, went up between me and the storm. Guess I'm good for something after all. Her hand reached out, brushing his more than you think. He looked down, their fingers almost but not quite touching. You're not reading me right now, are you? No, she said softly. I'm listening the old way. That answer did something to his chest, something unfamiliar and warm. She looked away, tail curling loosely around her legs. When I was inside the storm, I heard you, not your words, your heartbeat. It was steady human, he swallowed. That's supposed to be rare for me. Yes, they sat there until the suns dipped beneath the canopy and the air cooled into twilight. Vio leaned gently against his shoulder, exhaustion pulling her eyelids down. He didn't move. When she finally whispered, "Thank you," it came through both voice and thought. Quiet, sincere, and threaded with something new. Aaron smiled faintly into the dark. Anytime. Fox, careful, human. Her sleepy thought brushed through his mind. Keep calling me that, and I'll start liking it. Morning broke slow and golden over mist clung to the roots, curling around the vines like silk smoke. The storm had passed both the psychic one and the emotional kind, and Aaron felt lighter, though he never admitted aloud. He woke early, the camp quiet, save for a few distant bird-like cries. His routine was muscle memory, boots, shirt, tools, water flask. But today, there was no work to distract him. The relay was fixed, the diagnostic stable. For the first time since arriving, he could breathe. He decided to walk the forest paths to clear his head, or at least pretend he could. His thoughts kept circling back to her. Vela, every flicker of her smile, every tilt of her head when she listened. Every moment she turned teasing into something that almost felt like care. It all lingered, impossible to shake. He followed a narrow trail that led down toward the river's edge, sunlight breaking through the canopy in molten streaks. The air smelled faintly of sweet sap and rainwormed stone. Then he heard it, soft splashes, the sound of someone moving through water. He froze. Through the mist, down in a shallow clearing, Vela stood waist-deep in the stream. Her back was to him, for slick with water, glowing faintly in the morning light. She moved slowly, unhurried, washing the remnants of sleep from her face and arms. Her tail floated on the surface, silver-tipped and shimmering. He should have turned around. He knew he should, but his mind didn't listen. She's beautiful. The thought arrived uninvited, quiet, reverent, painfully honest. More followed, less than decent. And in that same instant, her ears twitched. Her head tilted just slightly to the side. Oh no! Her voice purred softly across the space between them. Smooth as silk and twice as dangerous. Careful, human. I can hear everything. Aaron froze solid. Hard thudding like a dropped wrench. Vio, she half turned just enough for him to see the curve of her grin. The gleam in her eyes. You humans have such vivid imaginations. I wasn't. Well, I was, but not. Look, you shouldn't. Oh, please, she teased, stepping closer to the shore. You think you can control thoughts? Yours are louder than thunder. He groaned into his hands. I swear you're going to kill me. Not yet, she said, laughter threading through her voice. I rather enjoy this game. Her tail flicked water his way as she stepped out of the stream, droplets running down her fur and catching the light like glass. He forced himself to stare at the trees, at the ground anywhere but her. But his brain, traitorous as ever, offered another thought anyway. She's going to tease me about this forever. Oh, she said sweetly, you have no idea how long I can tease. He laughed then, helpless, half mortified, half delighted. You're cruel. Curious, she corrected, drawing closer. I never understood human attraction before. It's all noise and color and honest that threw him off balance. He glanced at her, meeting her eyes for the first time since she'd caught him. They weren't mocking now. They glowed with warmth, faint and uncertain. I'm not proud of what I was thinking, he said quietly. You were admiring, she countered. There's no shame in beauty being seen. He hesitated. And you don't mind? Viola tilted her head, smile softening. If I did, would I be standing this close? He hadn't noticed. She'd closed the distance between them, water still glistening in her fur, her tail curling around behind her like a living ribbon. Her presence filled the space between breaths. Va? Yes, human. I just don't want you to think I'm some kind of beast, she murmured. Funny. That's what I thought humans were before I met you. He blinked. You did. She nodded. Loud, crude, arrogant. But your thoughts? She placed 2 fingers gently against his temple. They're kind. Clumsy sometimes, but kind. His pulse hammered. You really can hear everything, can't you? Everything you try not to say, she whispered. Everything you wish you could. For a heartbeat, the world narrowed to the warmth of her touch, the faint hum between their minds. Then she pulled back just slightly, eyes playful again. And for the record, you're not the only one who has those thoughts. He blinked. Wait, what? Her grin turned sly. Oh, don't look so shocked. You're rather nice to look at, too. Human. Before he could reply, she brushed past him, tails swishing against his side in a deliberate flick that left his thoughts scrambled and her laughter echoing through them both. Come on, she said, glancing over her shoulder. If you keep thinking like that, I'll never get any work done today. He exhaled, dragging a hand down his face, half laughing, half dazed. You're impossible, GED, she said again. And this time, he didn't argue. As they walked back toward camp, she reached out, her tail brushing against his hand. Not by accident, not this time. And though she said nothing, her thoughts brushed faintly against his. You're not the only one who's curious, human. And for once, he didn't try to hide a single thought that followed. Rain rolled in before noon, thick and warm, drumming against the canopy like 1,000 tiny drums. The sky turned copper gray, the air heavy and electric. Aaron and Vela barely made it back to camp before the first thunder cracked. The outpost's prefabed shelter groaned as the storm intensified, lights flickering from the humidity. Aaron sealed the outer door and turned only to find VA standing there, soaked for flattened against her frame, droplets sliding down her cheeks like tiny diamonds. Don't look at me like that, she said, wringing water from her tail. I wasn't, he lied, her lips curved. You were, he sighed, gesturing toward a thermal blanket. You'll catch a chill. I don't get chills, she said, taking the blanket anyway. We're built for storms. Then humor me. She wrapped the blanket around herself, tail and all, the fabric barely covering the length of her frame. When she sat across from him on the floor, the faint shimmer of psychic warmth radiated through the small room like a quiet heartbeat pulsing between them. For a while, the only sound was the rain. Then, Violet broke the silence softly. You think too loudly when you're nervous. I'm starting to think that's my default state around you. Perhaps she tilted her head, studying him. But your thoughts, they've changed. He frowned. Changed how? They used to be full of worry, doubt, you wanted to prove yourself. Now they are warm, curious. Her gaze held him. When you look at me, you think about us. Aaron felt heat rise in his neck. You're not exactly making it easy to stay professional. VA's tail flicked beneath the blanket. Professional is overrated. He laughed quietly, shaking his head. You really enjoy doing this to me, don't you? Yes, she said simply. Then her tone softened. But not just a tease. Something fragile entered her voice, and he noticed for the first time that her usual playfulness had faded. The ember in her eyes dimmed, replaced by something uncertain. "Viola," she hesitated, tail curling tighter around herself. "You humans, you fall so easily. You open your minds without walls, your hearts without fear. It's reckless." "That's one way to describe it. It's dangerous," she said. "When I link with someone, even a little, I feel what they feel. Most minds are noise, but yours," she exhaled, eyes fluttering closed. "Yours is like standing too close to a fire. It burns." It means he leaned forward slightly. "And that scares you." She met his gaze. "Yes," he thought for a moment, then spoke gently. "You said once that humans think in stories. Maybe that's what this is, a story we haven't finished yet." Her ears flicked up at that cautious hope flickering in her expression. "And how does your story end, human?" "Don't know," he said honestly. "But I'd rather write it with you than guess at it alone." Vila's breath caught. Then she laughed softly, a sound that trembled at the edges. "You always find the right words. Only because you keep reading the wrong thoughts." Her smile returned faint but real. She shifted closer, the air between them humming with quiet tension. "If I let myself feel what you feel, there will be no going back." "Then don't go back," he said. "Stay here, stay with me." For a heartbeat, either moved. Then VA reached out and pressed her forehead lightly to his. The contact was electric. Not just skin, but thought, emotion, everything. He felt her curiosity, fear, longing, the echo of loneliness that had haunted her since she'd first touched the weave, and beneath it all, something bright and fragile. Want. Her mental voice trembled through his mind, soft as rain. "You'd really let me in completely already have," he whispered back. Their breaths mingled. The weaves shimmered faintly between them, threads of light rippling along her fur. For a moment, the entire world shrank to that space between their hearts. Then she pulled back, eyes glassy but smiling. "Careful human," she murmured, voice husky. "I might start believing you." "You should," he said. Her tail brushed his legs, slow, deliberate. "Maybe I already do." The storm outside raged louder, wind howling through the trees, but neither of them moved. Aaron could feel her emotions threading into his tentative and real-to minds, touching without barriers for the first time. And as the thunder rolled overhead, Vio whispered, not through thought this time, but aloud, her voice small but sure. "You're dangerous too, Aaron Cale." He smiled faintly. Guess we're even then. The storm had passed by dawn, leaving the air washed clean and heavy with promise. Rain still clung to the leaves like jewels, the forest steaming softly in the golden light. Aaron and VA stood on the ridge above the valley, watching the morning mists rise from the glowing river below. Neither spoke for a long while. Their silence was a language now. Every breath, every pulse between their minds, a quiet exchange of meaning. When she finally turned to him, her expression was unreadable. "There is something my people do," she said. When two souls decide to trust each other beyond doubt, he raised a brow. "Sounds serious?" "It is. It's called the weave bond, a joining of thought and spirit." Her eyes softened. "It can't be undone." Aaron's throat tightened. "Like marriage." Violet tilted her head, amused. "Closer than that. If I bond with you, you will hear me always, even from across stars. My fears, my dreams, my truth." He hesitated, not out of fear, but all, "and you'd hear mine." "I would." She stepped closer, tail brushing lightly against his arm. "But only if you choose to share them." For a moment, the only sound was the soft rustle of her fur in the breeze. Then he smiled, faint and steady. "You already hear half my thoughts anyway. Might as well make it official." Her laughter shimmered through the air, warm, musical, and laced with disbelief. "You are either brave or foolish. Human," he grinned. "Why not both?" She studied him, eyes bright with something deeper than amusement, something vulnerable. "Then kneel, Aaron Cale." He obeyed without question. VA, when it faded, the air settled and everything seemed quieter except the faint hum inside his chest. He could still hear his own heartbeat, but now there was another rhythm layered with it. Hers. She opened her eyes. "It is done." Aaron blinked, dazed. "That's it. No fireworks, no headache." Violet smiled, faint and sly. "Wait until I get angry." He laughed, then sobered as her expression softened again. "Do you feel it?" she asked. He nodded slowly. It's like you're standing right behind my thoughts, and you're behind mine. For a moment, Ether spoke. They didn't need to. Their emotions blended at the edges. Curiosity, affection, the quiet, unspoken certainty of us. Then a shout echoed from the village below. Vulpines were gathering near the comm relay, their psychic lights flickering with agitation. They feel it, VA murmured, tail lowering. The bond isn't subtle. They know what I've done. Is that bad? For them, perhaps. She turned to him, eyes glowing steady. For me? No. He hesitated. You'll get backlash for this, won't you? Yes, she smiled faintly. But I'm used to noise. And you, her voice echoed softly in his mind, are worth the volume. He felt her amusement through the link before she spoke aloud. Come, if they're going to shout, we might as well face them together. As they descended toward the village, whispers rippled through the air, real and psychic alike. Some stared in wonder, others in disapproval. But Vela walked with her head high, tail swaying like a banner of defiance. Aaron followed a step behind, half expecting hostility. Instead, the eldest of the Vulpines approached, eyes shimmering faintly with the weave's light. You joined a human? The elder asked, voice heavy with disbelief. VA's answer was steady. I did. The Ellerzy's gaze shifted to Aaron, and you accept the burden of he. Expression of balance. Your tail nearly knocked over my toolkit. That was balance in progress. Her laughter echoed both in his mind and out loud from across the clearing, a sound so bright it startled the birds from the branches. He smiled without turning. Life had settled into a rhythm, an impossible, telepathic, strangely domestic rhythm. They were still rebuilding parts of the communication array for the human outpost. But now, Vela helped him by guiding psychic feedback through her link with the weave. Together, they turned an unstable network into something no one on Earth could have imagined. A living communication node, a blend of Terran tech and Vulpine telepathy. It worked because they worked. Aaron still thought too loud sometimes, especially when Vela decided to tease him mid. Once, when he was welding a support frame, she projected an image of herself lounging dramatically on the console in his mind's eye. The resulting jump nearly had him torching his own boot. Vioa, he barked aloud. Her mental tone purred sweetly. You're the one who keeps imagining it. I'm only giving you what you want. It was impossible to win arguments with someone who lived inside your thoughts, but he wouldn't have traded it for anything. The villagers had grown used to them by now, mostly. A few still stared whenever the two passed together, murmuring about the human bonded or the weave's experiment. But even that felt like background noise next to the quiet certainty between them. In the evenings, they often sat outside the village on the edge of the ridge, watching the sun set behind the violet hills. Sometimes they spoke aloud. More often, they didn't need to. One night, while the forest sang with distant voices of the weave, Aaron leaned back against a rock, arms behind his head. You're quiet tonight, he thought. Listening came her reply. The forest is full of minds. They sound calmer now, because of the relay, because of us. He turned his head to look at her. The light caught her fur, outlining her in shades of gold and tangerine. She was watching the horizon, eyes distant but warm. You know, she murmured in his thoughts, when we first met, your mind was chaos, sharp edges, too loud. But now, when I listen, it feels like home. That might be the nicest thing. Anyone's ever said to me, don't get used to it. She smiled. He felt it before he saw it, and then reached out, her tail curling around his leg. You never told me what you'll do when your mission ends, she said aloud. He shrugged. Guess I already did it. Her ear twitched. Oh, I came here to build a connection. I just didn't expect it to be with you. Her laugh was soft, genuine, careful, human. That almost sounded poetic. Guess your influence is rubbing off on me. They felt quiet again, their shared thoughts weaving together like threads. He felt her curiosity drift across his mind, gentle as the breeze. Do humans really believe love is blind? Not blind, he replied. Just stubborn enough to ignore what's supposed to be impossible. Her eyes glimmered. Then perhaps we are very human after all. Later that night, when the stars bled silver through the canopy, Vela lay beside him in the grass, her tail draped over his leg like a living blanket. Through the bond, he could feel her drifting thoughts, half dreams of light and laughter, of him trying to build a bridge from metal, and her weaving one from memory. He whispered quietly, unsure if he spoke or thought it. You're still listening, aren't you? Always, she murmured, in both voice and mind, but not to pry to stay close. He smiled. Guess that's what humans call love. Her thoughts curled around his like warmth from a hearth. Then, I love the way your thoughts sound when you stop trying to hide them. He laughed softly. That's cheating. No, she said. That's honesty. They lay there until dawn, until the forest lit up again with color and life. The future was uncertain. Missions ended. World shifted. Politics above them would question what they'd done. But none of that mattered right then. Two beings, one of fur and fire, one of metal and will, had found something that crossed every kind of distance. And somewhere deep within the shared silence of their minds, she whispered one last thought before sleep claimed them both. Your world taught me how to listen. Mine taught you how to feel. Together, maybe we can teach both how to understand. Aaron's answering thought came like a quiet smile. Then let's start tomorrow. 3 months later, the peace they built began to ripple. It started with a flicker in the comm network, a long-range Terran signal cutting through the static of the weave. The moment it reached the village, every relay crystal pulsed in sync. Aaron felt it before he saw it. A faint hum deep in the link he shared with VA, like a voice from the stars clearing its throat. They're calling you home, she thought softly. He didn't answer right away. The message scrolled across his wrist pad, short and sterile. Mission review. Velhera, relay success confirmed. High Command delegation en route. Prepare for inspection. Inspection? VO was silent for a long moment before she said aloud. They'll notice. Yeah, they'll feel it. Yeah, he said, again quieter. She turned away, ears low. They'll unmake what we've built. Humans fear what they can't categorize. He reached out and caught her hand, fingers brushing the soft fur of her wrists. Not all humans. Her golden eyes met his. Maybe not, but they won't understand this. He wanted to argue, but deep down, he knew she was right. A human telepathically linked to an alien shaman wasn't a love story to the diplomats. It was a political hazard. The following days were full of restless activity. The villagers repaired the landing plateau. Aaron double-checked every calibration on the relay array. Viola moved like a ghost through the worksite. Quiet, but alert. They didn't speak of the bond much. It was always there, humming faintly between them. But both could feel the tension tightening like a wire. On the morning the ships arrived, the sky burned silver. The Terran shuttles descended in perfect formation, scattering the mist. Soldiers in clean uniforms disembarked, followed by a woman in a white command coat and mirrored visor. Aaron Kale. He stepped forward, saluting instinctively. Yes, ma'am. She glanced at her pad. You've done impressive work here. The data relay's efficiency exceeded projections by 42%. Command is intrigued. Aaron forced a small smile. Glad to hear it. Her visor tilted slightly toward, via who stood a few paces back, calm and radiant in her silence. And your liaison. The officer said, we received unusual readings during your last transmission. Something about neural interference. Aaron opened his mouth, but VA's thought brushed through his mind first. Don't lie. Don't hide. Truth is strength. He nodded faintly, then said aloud, the readings are from a conscious connection between her and me. The officer's head tilted. You're saying telepathic entanglement, bonding, Aaron said. Mutual, voluntary. A murmur rippled through the Tyrannades. The officer's mouth tightened. That's unorthodox corporal. Extremely unorthodox. VA's tail flicked once, slow and deliberate. Unorthodox things tend to build bridges, she said, her voice carrying like silk over steel. That's why he came here, isn't it? The officer stared at her a long time. And what exactly do you feel, Miss Vela, from this human of yours? VA's gaze softened, enough to know he's worth listening to. The silence that followed was heavy. Aaron's pulse thundered. The officer finally exhaled and turned away. Command will want a full debrief. Both of you. Until then, you're confined to the settlement. Do not attempt off-world contact. She left without another glance. That night, under the twin moons, Aaron and VO sat outside their hut, the jungle whispering around them. So, he thought, house arrest. At least it's a lovely prison. He smiled, but the humor faded quickly. They'll dissect this, try to understand it, regulate it, maybe even erase it. Va turned her head, the silver in her fur catching the moonlight. Then we'll show them it's real. The weave connects every thinking mind. It was never meant to divide. And if they order me to leave, then I'll follow, she said simply. I am part of your signal now. The sincerity in her thought hit him like gravity. You'd leave your world? She smiled faintly. My world already found me again in you. He pulled her closer without thinking, arms around her waist, her tail curling instinctively around him in return. The warmth between them thrummed through the bond, no longer two voices, but one harmony carried on different notes. A few days later, the Terran delegation made camp near the forest edge, their instruments pulsing with sterile light. They took readings, samples, endless data. Aaron cooperated. Vela endured, but each night he felt the quiet strength of her presence settle over him like a protective thought. Then one evening, as the humans prepared to transmit their findings back to orbit, VA turned to him and whispered, "They'll never understand the numbers until they feel them." He frowned. "What do you mean?" She took his hand. "Link with me. Show them." The idea hit him like a spark. Dangerous, brilliant, perfectly her. When the final diagnostic pulse went out across the network, VO reached into the weave, pulling the relay open like a window. For a heartbeat, every human within range caught a whisper. An echo of her thoughts twining with his compassion, curiosity, joy, the raw, unfiltered pulse of shared understanding. It lasted only a moment before the relay dimmed again. But when it did, the Terran officer stared at them in stunned silence. Aaron broke it first. "That's what it feels like," he said quietly. "That's what we built." The officer said nothing for a long time, then finally nodded once. "You might have just